Thanks for being here. Subscribe to Cheating Stories Best, so you don't miss new stories.
I arrived home on Friday evening thinking that after a hard week on the plane, I would be able to have a good time in the company of my pretty wife. 3 more or less independent children live separately. We are after 22 years of marriage, maybe we could go somewhere and have a nice evening. I walked into the kitchen from the garage and looked at the mail on the kitchen table. I heard a noise upstairs and then the sound of feet going down the steps. My attractive 45-year-old wife walked into the living room wearing a short robe that never failed to excite me whenever she put it on. "Oh," she exclaimed, "you're early. I didn't expect you until an hour or so later." I looked at my watch and realized that I had arrived early, but it's not too early. "What is this for? Where are we going?" "Well, I'm leaving. I don't know what you're doing, okay? My weekend just went down the drain." "What do you mean you're leaving? Where and with whom?" Her gaze fell on a small bag of things standing at the end of the sofa. I have a date with William Strathmore. This is for the weekend. I'll be home Sunday night and we'll talk about it." What the hell did she just say? I thought, I need to finish getting ready. She turned and ran upstairs and I heard the door slam. "You're going to do this," I said to myself. My first thought was that I needed reinforcements. I took out my mobile phone and dialed my daughter's number. I wasn't going to be the bad guy because of what my wife said. "Hello, Daddy. What's the matter?" She answered cheerfully. I grabbed her mother's purse and emptied the contents onto the coffee table. "I need you to come here immediately. Your mother hurt her head and she needs us." "I have to go, Dad." "Dad," I heard, hanging up. My son received the same message with the addition, "Call your brother and tell him to come here fast, Dad." What the? But I ended the conversation. Then I quickly dialed her parents and said the same thing. They had the same confusion and a few screams when I passed out Judith's purse. Spilled out the usual contents, credit cards, keys, 12 packs of Trojan condoms. I had a vasectomy and a copy of the confirmation email from the Marriott Hotel in Kenworth, rooms 703 to 710. I thought. William Strathmore was one of the pediatric surgeons at her work. I've met him at a hospital Christmas party a few times over the past 5 years, and the guy was slimy, and that was the best thing I could say about him. His wife was stunningly beautiful, but I got the impression that she had problems with him. I confiscated credit cards and car keys. Then I took the email and put it in my pocket just in case. I took my mobile phone and opened it. Her code was our anniversary date. Hey, she was still busy upstairs. So I pulled out the emergency list from her work and found this good doctor. His cell phone is not needed, but his home phone would help. I dialed it, and after 2 rings, someone answered. "Oh dear, I was waiting for your call. I don't recognize this number though. Is everything okay?" "Is this Mrs. Strathmore?" "Yes, and who is it?" "This is David Collins. My wife is the head nurse at the hospital where your husband works. I don't know if you remember me." "Yes, Dave, I remember. My husband and I were talking about you and your wife a couple of days ago. I was expecting a call from William when you called. What can I do for you?" "So your husband is not at home?" "No, he's in Boston at a surgical conference. Everything is fine." "Look, Mrs. Strathmore, I don't know how to say this, but I don't think he's there. I just had an argument with my wife and she told me she was going to spend the weekend with him at the Marriott in Kenworth, which would end on Sunday evening." "What? What are you speaking about?" "I think we're both being lied to. I have email confirmation to rent 7 adjoining rooms on the 7th floor from today through Monday. I saved your number, Mr. Collins. Let me get back to you." I've had enough of this crap. I looked at the emergency call list and found the phone number of the hospital's director of health, Corin Adams. I knew her. She and my wife were good friends. I knew her husband. He was a detective sergeant. I dialed her number. Almost immediately, she answered. "Hello, who is this?" "Karen, this is David Collins, Judith's husband." I heard a muffled, "Oh no." "Yes, Dave, what can I do for you?" Definitely scared. I think there is some impropriety going on between Dr. Strathmore and my wife, and I wanted investigated and stopped. "Sorry, Dave, I can't talk right now. I have to go." Click. Wow, that's weird. Almost immediately, Judith's cell phone rang. On the 3rd ring, feeling my stomach churn, I answered the call. Without waiting for me to say anything, the caller began, "Judith, he knows. He knows everything. What did you tell him?" And then I gave her. Not all, Karen, but gradually I find out. The shrill sigh on the other end of the line was very instructive. Goodbye. Click. I immediately found her home phone number and dialed it. For rings, and a man answered, "Look, I don't want to upgrade my cable service." "Jerry, looks like you've had a bad day." "Who is this?" "Dave Collins, Judith's husband?" "Yes, nothing but sales calls and spam." "What's the matter, Dave?" Is Karen home?" "No, I'm babysitting the kids this weekend." "Karen is at a hospital-sponsored team-building weekend in Philadelphia." "Why do you ask?" I took a deep breath and told him everything I had learned and suspected. "I suspect that it's not just the three of them involved. 7 hotel rooms." There was silence on the other end of the line. "Are you thinking about the same thing as me?" "I don't know what I'm thinking about, but I know one thing. Judith won't leave here tonight. Even if I end up in jail, I'll contact you if I find out anything. Don't do anything stupid." Jerry was a cop and I could hear the wheels turning. Judith then walked down the stairs, looking like an expensive call girl in a red silk sheath dress. The neckline reached almost to the waist and was divided on the right side to mid-thigh. She saw her purse thrown on the table. "What the? I have to go, and you threw away all my things." She started collecting everything, and I shouted, "Oh no, you will not do this. You are not going anywhere. Now shut up and sit down." She trembled and said, "I don't belong to you. I can do whatever I want." "Yes, well then I can too. How do you like it?" I reached out and grabbed the low neckline of her dress, ripping it down. Suddenly, she found herself practically naked, standing in an open cup bra, French lace garter belt, and a lace top of smoky gray seam stockings. She screamed and wailed, "My dress." "No, this is not your dress. I bought it for our 25th wedding anniversary along with most of the underwear you wore. If you go anywhere tonight, you won't wear this dress." Then my cell phone rang. "Hello, Dave Collins, this is Mary Strathmore. I'm sorry to tell you, but you were right. I called the police and reported the car stolen. I bought the car for him and it's registered in my name. They stopped him about 5 minutes ago. He claimed that he was my husband and that he had the right to drive the car." She chuckled in a tense voice. "They called me and told me that he said he was my husband. I heard him in the background as I loudly told the cops that this was impossible. My husband is in Boston." The backyard gasped and said he needed a lawyer. "I have to go down and fix the mess. He's arrested and the car is confiscated. Tell your wife I'll come get her next time." We were talking on speakerphone. As soon as I realized whose call it was, Judith gasped and screamed, "What did you do, David? Damn you." Just at this time, my children ran in. "Dad, what's going on?" "Mom, are you okay?" Dave Jr. asked. My daughter Haley burst into the room and approached her mother. "Are you okay, Mom? What happened to your dress?" "Your father tore it up." Death glares turned towards me. "What the hell, Mom? What have you done? Tell me. Tell them." "Why, Judith? Walk straight. Why do you have 12 packs of condoms in your purse? Are you going to make water balloons or something?" "I don't know where they came from. They are not mine," Judith said in an almost inaudible voice. "And where were you going? A sexy weekend without my husband? Isn't that what you meant? I can do what I want. This is my body." As soon as it was said, Judith realized what she had said in front of her children. In a quieter voice, she said, "Well, that's my business." Young Dave rolled his eyes and went to the kitchen to get something to drink. A few minutes later, he returned with an envelope. "Here, Dad. It's addressed to you." He looked at his mother with contempt on his face. Judith screamed and jumped up from the sofa, the remains of her dress falling to the floor. "Don't read this," she screamed. Haley rushed to help her mother cover herself. "Shut up, Judith, and sit back." I opened the envelope and read out loud, "My dear husband, my sister is caring for her mother and needs some help. I'm going to be with them this weekend and we'll be home Monday evening. Kisses and hugs, Judith." The children looked at each other and did not know what to think. I realized that she had written the note before she came face to face with me. Her confusion and panic would be her downfall. Then, as if the fates were eating popcorn and watching the show, the front doorbell rang. Before Michael could open it, Judith's mother and father burst in. "Judith, are you okay?" asked her mother. Her father roared, "What is going on here, Judith?" Judith fainted. "Hello, Mom and Dad. Welcome to the center of the storm. Your daughter just managed to ruin our marriage and probably ruin her life and career," I seethed. Her mother and my daughter tried to revive Judith while her father slowly boiled over. I brought them up to speed on what had happened and the atmosphere became colder and colder. About this time, Judith came to her senses and looked around hysterically. She begged her mother to help her. Help? Do you need help? How about calling your sister to help you? You were going to help her with your mother. Maybe she can return the favor to you. With these words, I handed the note to her father and dialed her sister's number. While he was reading aloud, the phone answered. Hello, is this David? Yes, Mavis, how are you? How's Mom doing? She's all right. Oh yes, she's doing well. Judith is really very helpful. I don't know what I would do without her. Can I talk to her, please? Oh well, she's busy right now. How about if I ask her to call you back after some time? Mom grabbed the phone and growled at her second daughter. This is not necessary, you self-centered. Her sister screamed in hysterics. Judith couldn't stand it again and collapsed on the floor. Now she was almost completely naked in front of her children and parents. Do not bother checking on my health, Mavis, she ended the conversation to the muffled cries of her second daughter. About this time, my phone rang again. David, this is Jerry. You were right. I got a search warrant for 7 rooms at the Marriott Hotel. We searched the area using a missing persons warrant that I had sworn in and found 12 more people, including my wife, 3 male doctors, 4 female doctors, 4 nurses, and another female member of the HR team. And my wife. I'm so sorry, Dave. Really sorry. Me too, Jerry, but it is what it is. Thank you. I turned to my future ex-wife. Go upstairs and put on something decent and get out of my house. She raised her whimpering self into a standing position and turned around to climb up. Then she stopped and said, please don't throw me away like this. Oh, you mean you ruined our marriage with your "it's my body, I'll do what I want" nonsense? I have been tempted many times. I could have had sex with the little waitress at the diner where we used to have coffee after the night shift. I could have gotten a woman at the Lincoln dealership where we bought the car. Hell, even your own sister was hitting on me. But I was in love with you, and this is the gratitude I receive. Get out of my life. She completely lost her composure, turned, and ran upstairs, losing her high-heeled shoe along the way. Silence reigned in the living room. Then my daughter said, I'll go and make sure she doesn't do anything stupid, Dad. Judith came downstairs about 30 minutes later with her suitcase, dressed in jeans and a sweatshirt. Her makeup and hair were a disaster. My eldest son stopped her on the way out. Don't worry, Mom. Adrian and I will plan your wedding so that it doesn't interfere with any of your sex festivities. It's not like you got an invitation. Maybe Dad can bring a new girlfriend. Adrian was Dave's serious girlfriend, but we didn't know how serious. Now we know. Completely lost, Judith stopped at the front door. Her mother accompanied her to the exit. Her father turned to me. Is there any way to overcome all this? She clearly needs help, but nothing seems to have happened. She can talk to my lawyer about it. Remember, son, she loves you. I looked him straight in the eye and said, funny way to show it. The funny thing was that they all threw out the same crap, adults all consenting, do nothing wrong until they are caught. It was then discovered that the good doctor had used the company's hospital credit card to rent rooms and pay for drinks and food for a weekend party. The hospital tried to avoid publicity, but 8 participants were listed as being on duty or at some fictitious official seminar or hospital event. When this became known, several marriages broke up. This was not the first party, but it was definitely the last one. I filed for divorce, but I'm basically a mild-mannered aircraft mechanic, do you remember? And I loved her more than my luggage, as they say in the film. So I let it drag on while she went to counseling. The kids were there for me and saw that at least I was making an effort, but it was so painful and it just happened like a bolt from the blue. How could I be so blind? United Airlines was sympathetic and I received extended medical leave. She lost her job along with everyone else involved. The good doctor was fired and then sued and prosecuted. Karen lost her job, as did her deputy. There was a severe shortage of nurses and several doctor positions opened up. My wife was the latest member of the sex club to be recruited, as they were looking for fresh meat. She had been noticed for quite some time and Karen had been working on her, saying that she owed it to herself, that it would be a lot of fun, I'd never know, and besides, many husbands get pleasure from their wives having sex with other men. It took 6 months, but in the end, they convinced her. It took over a year, but I loved her and couldn't live without her. The old question, would you be better off with or without her in your life? I watched her like a hawk. I constantly bombarded her with questions about whether everything was okay with us or not. She reported, and I listened to her carefully. It got to the point where it was driving her crazy, but listening to her therapist, her parents, and our children, she knew I was making an incredible effort and she loved me. God, but I believed her. I sued the hospital and Dr. Strathmore. I had to join the queue after his wife's divorce suit, but I was ahead of the other injured parties. Together, we cleaned it out. The hospital was not very lucky. We, my kids and I, settled out of court for a 6-figure sum in a sealed agreement. The remaining plaintiffs received a total of 7 figures in sealed awards. My daughter-in-law was not welcome anywhere. I don't know if her parents have talked to her yet. Am I lucky with the result, with how it all came out? The fact that at the right time, my mind turned on all 8 cylinders and the support of my children and my friends. I didn't think I took my marriage for granted, but maybe I did. No more. It took over a year, but we are back and our sex is damn delicious. Sometimes she sobs in post-coital bliss and apologizes for all the trauma she has caused, but it's gradually getting better. And like I said, I love her, but don't think I'm a weakling. About 8 months after the storm, I cheered the doctor on as he left the gym. I beat the living dog out of him, breaking 3 of his fingers and crushing 1 of his balls. His good looks no longer exist. Luckily for me, I was in the company of a police officer at the time. So life goes on. Yes, I know it's very tasteless and cruel. Don't mess with my wife and I'll stay meek. Thank you for listening to this story. Now here is another exciting story for you to read. Tammy didn't listen to me. I had just returned to the car after checking out and paying the bill. When I handed the manager my room key across the counter, he ignored it. Instead, he stood up, walked to the wall behind his desk, and flicked on the switch. A red glow flickered on the walls. I turned around, thinking it might be a police light, but it was he who turned on the flashing vacancy sign. Our room must have been the last one available, and now that we were done, the manager was trying to rent it out twice in one evening. The next thing he did was pick up the phone, press 2 numbers, pause, and then say, "Doreen, number 3, urgently." Only after that did he return to the counter with my bill. After paying and returning to my car, I saw the maid's cart already in front of the open door of the room where Tammy and I had spent the last hour. I got in the car, thanked Tammy for the great time, and told her how much fun I had with her. As usual, she didn't listen to me because she was completely engrossed in her phone. The same thing happened on the way to the motel, as if our time together was just a temporary distraction from her endless texting with her friends. I tried to make my words sound sincere, but in reality, I was only pretending. I felt relaxed and satisfied because she knew how to push my buttons and make me enjoy myself. In return, I usually gave her some good sex from which she was delighted. There was nothing more to our relationship than that. As I finished my casual expression of gratitude, I saw another car quickly pull into the parking lot not far from my car. I wasn't worried because most of the lights in the motel parking lot were out, and I parked carefully in a lot so dark that no one could tell what color my car was, let alone see my license plates. He new car was parked almost directly in front of the office, so it was bathed in white light highlighted by a flashing red vacancy sign. I saw a man get out of the car and quickly go to the office. While I was fumbling with the keys, the man left the office. He signed up almost as quickly as I did. His passenger, a woman, got out of the car and ran towards him. At the same time, she turned her head in all directions. She reminded me of the first time I met Tammy. I looked around just like she was doing now because I was scared to death that someone would see me. Tammy didn't care about anything other than revenge on her unfaithful husband. I sank into my seat, watching the woman. I knew I was in the dark and she couldn't see me, but there was no point in taking the risk. The woman stepped into the white light, the vacancy sign flashed bright red, and her worried face was clearly illuminated. My heart stopped. It was Helen. 2 seconds later, they were at the door of the room. The maid had already left. My wife entered the room and the door closed behind them. My first instinct was to jump out of the car, break down the door, beat the man to a pulp, and drag Helen by her hair to my car. But I pulled myself together and took a deep breath. I looked at Tammy to see if she had seen anything. She was completely immersed in her phone. When I calmed down, I became scared. My throat tightened. It felt like someone was strangling me to death. These were my physical and mental reactions to the realization that I could stop Helen before she cheated, but if I did, it would destroy our marriage. I started the car because I didn't trust myself. If I had stayed there, I might have done something I would regret for the rest of my life. I quickly drove to the mall where Tammy had left her car. As soon as I parked a few rows behind mine, she felt that the car was not moving, looked up, saw where we were, and opened the door. Bye-bye. A second later, she disappeared from my sight. I looked around the parking lot and didn't see anyone. I screamed, and then I couldn't stand it and burst into tears. I hit the steering wheel so hard that my hand hurt. I also wanted to hit myself on the head hard enough to drive away the thoughts that were racing wildly in my brain. I don't know how long it took until I calmed down. I didn't look at my watch, but I knew that now I had one less question left. The maid didn't have time to change the bedding, so she probably just laid it on top. By this time, Helen was covered in the dried sweat that Tammy and I had left there. I choked on the thought. I forced myself to get that image out of my head and think about what would happen. What are my options? I could go home immediately, pay Mrs. Reynolds, and send her home. I might have a couple of drinks before Helen gets home. When she sees my car in the garage, she will have time to rehearse her story before she enters. I know roughly how it will be. She needed to buy something at the mall. I wondered if this was the same shopping center where I parked. Should I drive around, find her car, and wait for her? Helen plans carefully, as do I. She probably bought what she needed in advance and keeps it in her trunk. The purchases are in her trunk in a shopping bag. Later in the evening, when he drops her off at the mall, she goes inside with her bag and walks around a bit, hoping to run into someone she knows so she can have evidence that she went shopping there that evening. Then she will go with her bag to the car. This is what I would see if I accidentally found her car and caught her off guard. She'll be surprised to see me when she gets home because I told her I have to work late and won't come until she's asleep. I wondered if she had called me at the office to check on me before leaving home. It didn't matter because my rear was covered. If my phone went directly to voicemail, she knew it meant I was talking to a client after hours. There was no one else in the office to talk to after my dates with Tammy. I always rushed back to the office and worked alone for a couple of hours. I would wait for a call from Helen that she was going to bed and then I would leave. After a while, and go straight home. There's no need to go back to the office tonight. I don't think Helen will call me from the motel. What should I tell her when she gets home? Should I try to confuse her? I could start by asking her what she bought. Was she at the mall where my sister works? Did she see her? She certainly wouldn't look exhausted and sweaty. She'd take a shower and look fresh as a daisy for Mrs. Reynolds' sake. Suppose I looked into her eyes, what would I see? As soon as I thought about this scene, I knew it would never happen. I never asked her about shopping. I might have gotten away with asking one time, but Helen's antipathy would have gone up after that. I shuddered, imagining how everything would happen. What started with me interrogating her will end with her interrogating me. She won't rest until she knows what's on my mind. I would try to shut up, but everything would end the same as always. She would find a way to make me tell everything. She would have confessed and explained to me her reasons for cheating. She would probably admit that they weren't good enough. The only good enough reason would have been revenge, but that was not the case. If she knew I was at the hotel and intended to get back at me, she would have walked up to my car, holding the man's hand, and spat on my window before entering the room. She would also turn around at the door and give me the middle finger before entering. If I started breaking down the door, she would call the police and let me spend the night in jail. No, she had no idea I was there. She was there for herself. Why was I not enough for her? She never seemed unsatisfied in bed. If she wanted something special, she always told me. This rarely happened. Helen was usually upbeat and positive. She always smiled. I tried to remember if there were any signs that she was unhappy with me. Suddenly it dawned on me. About a month ago, she asked me if I was getting bored with her. I immediately and emphatically told her how crazy that sounded. She was and will always be the most exciting thing in my life. Now I was struck by lightning. Where did this question come from? It wasn't dissatisfaction, it was disappointment. How many times has she been disappointed? I remembered a couple, but there were probably many more. She was in a great mood, but I was tired. She never criticized me, but she was disappointed. She once remarked that I used to demand so much love that it bored her at times, but now she seemed to want it more than I did. I told her that's not true. Didn't I prove how much I lusted after her every time we made love? But she felt that something was wrong. I worked hard, played with the kids, did things around the house like always, but now I had someone else to worry about, Tammy. I had never thought about it before, but I was having as much sex as always, maybe even more. The difference was that now there were two women providing it, so if one of them was rejected, she was upset and doubted herself. Helen is as beautiful and sexy as any woman 10 to 15 years younger. I was sure she was sometimes picked on in the office. Since I was no longer courting her the way I used to, she was probably wondering about her attractiveness as a woman. This left her vulnerable to the attention of someone who took advantage of her weakened defenses. Once she decided to give in to him, I'm sure she was prepared. She thought through shopping at the mall or came up with another scheme that was even more reliable. She knew that Mrs. Reynolds babysat only a few families and was available on short notice most days. Just like Tammy had done, she probably scouted out all the out-of-the-way cheap motels so she and the man could drive from one to the other until they found an opening. Once she finished getting ready, all Helen had to do was wait until the next time I called her and told her I had to work late. It was this evening. After finishing her conversation with me, she called her boyfriend and then Mrs. Reynolds. She was sure that she would return home long before me. But even if I accidentally returned home, she probably had a plan to present it. She never expected me to leave the motel at the same time they checked in. How was she to know that her traitorous husband decided that he wouldn't hurt anyone if he helped Tammy get revenge on her husband and then proceeded to have sex with Tammy for no reason other than that she was different and a little different from Helen? She was definitely neither prettier nor a better lover. I liked Tammy, but I didn't have any special feelings for her. There was no reason for my affair. Why did I only see this now? If I had run into Helen when I got home, she would have cried and I would have cried. She would admit everything and I would admit everything. We would forgive each other and promise never to cheat again, and we would live unhappily from then on, at least until the kids left for college. It would have been terrible for Helen, but I wasn't thinking about her right now. I selfishly thought only of myself. I would have been destroyed. Why in the end, she cheated and I cheated. We were even, the scales were balanced. Not really. I'd get a double whammy. I will always be haunted by the image of Helen sneaking a look around the parking lot as she ran to the door to get into the same bed Tammy and I had been in just minutes earlier. But there would be something a million times worse, her eyes. The admiration and adoration that always came from them will disappear. Her love for me was so strong that sometimes I felt her radiate warmth. It makes me glad that I'm alive and that I'm her man. I gave thanks every Sunday for being blessed with her. Once she knew what I had done, Helen's eyes would no longer see me as special and different, the best husband, father, and lover in the world, as she liked to remind me. She could put on a performance for me and the children, as well as for our family and friends. But I knew there would be many times when we would be alone and she would get tired. She would let her guard down and I would see the pain and sadness of losing her complete confidence, security, and trust in me. That's why I would have to divorce her as soon as the kids left. I can't look into those eyes every day alone. She idolized me and I took it for granted. I took her for granted. Every time her eyes showed me that I had messed up, it would be like a stab to the heart. No, it shouldn't be like this at all. She will never know what I did or what I knew. Her life will be better than ever. No matter how much money I have to leave on the table, I will be coming home for dinner every night from now on. I didn't travel often for business, but that's all behind me now. We don't need money that much. I'm going to stick to her like glue so she won't even think about leaving me again. She'll get more sex from me than a porn star. I won't stop until she tells me she's in too much pain to continue. I'll count how many times a month I made her come and try to beat the record as often as I can. We will do things together that we have never done before. One evening, we're going to sit down and write bucket lists and then work on them together. She will shine for a moment. I wondered if Helen would ever regret her infidelity as she enjoyed her charmed life with a husband she considered faithful and our wonderful children. Probably not. If she's like me when I was with Tammy, I never thought about Helen. I knew she would never know, and what she didn't know wouldn't hurt her. Helen will probably feel the same way. I am her happy, faithful husband and she is my devoted wife. Since it only happened once, it didn't mean anything. If she has any guilt, she will let it go, making it up to me in weeks or months. Eventually, it will all fade from her mind and she will be able to forget it ever happened. But not me. I already know that no matter how hard I try to put it out of my mind, I will never forget that evening when she came into the room after me. Dear viewers, thank you for staying with us and supporting our channel. See you again.